Hi everyone, it's Joel from 8400 Lights, and today we are going to be transforming this into this. Now these are some old LED trees that I've had in my display for a number of years now. They are just a bunch of LEDs all strung together on about a little over 5-foot tree. And as these have gotten older, some of the LEDs have burned out. So I thought it would be kind of fun to convert this into a pixel tree instead. So that is what we're going to do today. And we're going to start by just disassembling this. On the base of this, it's rather an ingenious design. I like this, where they're just all held in and tensioned with some springs and clips that clip into the base here. So when I would take this apart and store it, I would just unclip all of my different strands from the base and then go ahead and store it. So here we can see the base of this again, and it has these little attachment points that are part of the base unit. And then again, each particular strand is tensioned with a little spring here and a little clip. And I like this methodology, so I'm going to try and adapt this when I convert this to pixels. And the other nice thing is this just comes apart in pieces. So this is off. And then we're left with the headpiece here. Our next step is going to be to dismantle and take off this headpiece. Now I might want to try to save some of these springs and some of these clips, and others like this one are pretty strung out, pretty stretched. So I'm not going to bother saving those, but I might save some of these for the rebuild. So now we'll just go ahead and try to take this headpiece off here, which just pulled off. So that worked out well. My next step is going to be to create a new hook head for this tree so that I can attach all of my pixel strips. Obviously that old hook head that I took off is not going to work. So I'm going to make mine out of wood, and I have this plank here that started off as a 2x6, which is a little bit too thick of material for what I want to do. So I ran that through a planer and brought it down to about 1 inch true. 2x6 is normally 1.5 inches thick. So I used the planer to bring that down to about a 1 inch true thick board, and we're going to use that as my hook head. The other thing I did is I created this little template here that is a number of concentric circles starting at a diameter of 1 inch and then going up 1/2 inch every circle that you see here. The dotted lines are the 1/2 inch and the solid lines are the full inch. So that's a 1 inch diameter, 1.5, 2 inch, 2.5, 3 inch. And I've thought about this, and we want to make sure that our hook head is as small as possible, but at the same time is large enough to handle all of the hooks that I'm going to be putting into it, and also that I don't crowd the top of my pixels too much. And I've decided that I want to go ahead and use a 3-inch diameter hook head. I'm going to make a 3-inch diameter hook head. So just so I don't confuse myself, I'm going to take this red Sharpie and I'm going to outline my 3-inch diameter circle here in my template. Here is my 3-inch diameter that I've highlighted in red, and that's just something for me when I go to cut this, that I can make sure I follow the correct line. The other thing that I did on this template is I added these radial lines here in blue for each one of my pixel strips. Now I am going to do 12 pixel strips on this particular tree, so I have 12 radial lines. And again, they're all put in here so that my angles are known and I can easily transfer this to my hook head. So now I'm going to cut this template down a little bit because I don't need all of this now that I know that I'm going to use my 3-inch diameter. Now that I have my rough cut done on this, and again it's just a rough cut because I'm going to cut this on a bandsaw to get it down to my 3-inch diameter. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to tape this down to my block here. Now that I've got this taped down, the next thing I want to do is drill a center hole here for mounting onto this pole that had the old hook head on it. And I've determined that the pole is about a 5/8 inch diameter. So I have a 5/8 inch bit in my drill press. And I want to do this now while this is still one large block of wood so that I can clamp it in place while I drill it. I have this clamped in place and aligned up, so we'll go ahead and drill it now. And when I drill this, I don't necessarily want to go all the way through the block of wood. And there's our mounting hole. Now we'll go ahead and cut the actual head out of this block of wood. Here is my hook head after I cut it out with the bandsaw. I spent a couple minutes with a power sander just kind of smoothing some of the edges and making it round or almost round. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to extend out all of my radial lines here onto the side of my hook head so that I can start preparing to put in my hook anchors. And to anchor my pixel strips, I found these little anchors. Should work out really nice. They've got this little spring clip on them here to keep things latched in place. And to extend my radial lines, I'm just going to do that by sight. Now that I have extended all of my radial lines onto the side of my new hook head, I want to go ahead and mark the exact center of this block here. And to do that, I have a T-square that I have set to 1/2 inch, because again, this block is 1 inch in depth here. I now have an exact spot on my new hook head for where each hook is going to go that is centered within the block. And in order to prevent this block from splitting when I put the hooks in, I'm actually going to drill a small pilot hole. Again, this material is thin enough and there's enough hooks here that I don't want to split the wood when I actually insert the hooks themselves. So again, I'm just going to drill a small pilot hole at each of these marked locations. Now that we have our pilot holes drilled, the next step will be to paint this white. Now that I have the new hook head painted white, I am going to go ahead and install the 12 new hooks for the pixel strips. And here is my completed hook head. My next step is to get a measurement of the amount of pixel mounting strip that we need to go from our new hook head down to the base of our tree. And to do that, I'm going to take an easy route and just simply attach a piece of the mounting strip to the hook head, and then put the hook head up, like that. and then come down here to the base and just kind of see where that gets me. Now I want to allow some amount of space here for my springs, for my tension. So I might come down to this hole here, or maybe this one. So I'm going to mark this hole with a piece of masking tape for the moment. And that will tell me what the last hole that I used was. So following the principle of measure twice and cut once, I've determined that my pixel strip should be a little over 63.5 inches, or a better way to count it might be 65 holes, which is so now I'm going to cut all of my pixel strips to 65 holes. And the best way that I have found to cut this is a technique a lot like cutting drywall. So I have my piece of tape here to mark off where my 65th hole was for my length. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this now by flipping it over and then taking a utility knife and just making a score line on the back. I don't have to go all the way through, I just want to score it like that. And then I will snap it. And then take my utility knife down. And it's a nice easy way to cut these. Now that I have the first one done, I just repeat the same process until I have 12 strips. Only this time I'm going to use my first strip as a template to lay out when I get to 65 holes. So I just lay one on top of the other, and if I keep them together, I'll come to where my 65th hole is and mark that with my piece of tape. And then go ahead and cut this. Now I've got all of my pixel strips cut to the correct length. So the next thing I want to do is add a little bit of reinforcement onto the end of each strip. Now technically this is something I probably wouldn't have to do, as there really isn't going to be that much tension on these strips when they're on the tree. But I was concerned over time with those hooks on the hook head and being outside that it may start to pull on this material a little bit and deform it. So Boscaio also sells these little aluminum clips, they called miser clips, that you can get and add to your strips as a reinforcing material. So we're going to add those on to my strips now. Now the way that their website shows you do this is you put the clip on and then you bend over a piece of the strip itself as a reinforcer. Now when I cut these exact length and did not allow for this bending over part that they were talking about. Partly because I found that it's extremely hard to do with this material. This material does not like to bend very easily. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark where my clip goes and then use a Sharpie here to mark on my pixel strip material where these holes are, and then go over to my drill press and drill out holes and then attach this with just a couple of cable ties, and I think that will be strong enough for my particular application. So I'm going to do this on each end of all 12 of my strips. Now that I have all of my holes marked for adding these miser clips onto my strips here, I'm going to go over to the drill press and actually drill all of the holes. I have my drill press all set up, and notice I'm using this backer board here just as a nice big flat surface to lay the strip on. So I will just align that up with my drill bit and then go ahead and drill my holes. Now that we have all of our holes drilled, we can go ahead and attach the miser clips. So we're just going to take a miser clip and take a couple of cable ties this. And attach the clip. Like that. I now have all of my miser clips attached to my strips here. So that is done. Now I want to use a system similar to how the original tree worked in providing tension to each of these, where the original tree just used a spring and a little clip to clip onto the base. But right now, I don't really have a good spot where I could attach any springs to these strips here. So I'm going to head over to the drill press and add a couple of holes onto one end of this and just drill straight through the miser clip and the strip itself that I can use to attach a pair of springs to provide my tension. And again, I only have to do this on one end of the strip. I'm back at my drill press, and I'm just going to basically freehand position placement of these other two holes here that I want to drill into this miser clip and pixel strip material. Now these new holes will serve as my mounting points for my tensioning springs. So I just have to do this on one end of each of my other strips. Now the next thing we're going to do is add our tensioning system onto the bottom of the strip here, where we've drilled these extra holes in the strip itself and the little miser clip underneath it. And to build a tensioning system, I got a number of these small springs here along with this little clip that's called a lanyard clip, I believe. And we're going to use two of the springs and the clip to attach to the end of our strip here, and then the clip will attach to a little point that already exists in the base of the tree frame that I'm currently using. So if you look at these springs, it looks like both ends of the spring are completely closed circles, but upon closer inspection, I found that one end, in this case this particular end here, is completely closed, and the other end still has a slight gap in it. And I want to be careful of that so that my clip and or my cable tie, whichever end up I use here, doesn't slip out. And we're actually going to go ahead and close that gap. So I'm going to start by taking a clip here and two of the springs and assembling this portion first, and then I'm going to attach it to my strip piece. And to assemble this, I want to keep in mind that I want the part where the clip opens and closes to face down so that I can clip it onto the frame of my tree base. So I'm going to turn it like this, which is exactly opposite right now, where the opening is on the top side. And then I'm also going to find which side of the spring here has the opening in it where the loop is not fully closed, and which side has a fully closed loop. And I'm going to take the end with the fully closed loop and hook that onto my clip. Like that. And then I'm going to do the same for the second spring. Now this is important because as I reverse this clip around and point this clip downwards, so now my opening is down to the inside where it will latch on to my base, I now have two springs that are coming off a left and a right direction that I can attach to my pixel strip. But before I do that, I'm going to take a pliers And I'm just going to bend this open end closed a bit, again so that it's got less of a chance of slipping out from the cable tie when I cable tie this to the strip. And it might be kind of hard to see these at this point, but I've actually closed these loops and made these loops on top a little bit smaller, which isn't going to affect the performance any. In fact, it'll help keep everything assembled. So now we'll just take the end of the strip and we'll take our tensioning assembly here and attach this with cable ties, making sure again that our clip is able to face downward towards the base of our tree. Now when you're doing these, you do want to try and get the springs to lay flat as much as possible. So you may have to turn them one particular direction or another so that they don't get twisted up, and will give you that nice flat alignment, which will make the tension more even on each side of the strip here. And there, we have added our tensioning system onto the end of this strip here.